So good morning, all of you. In our last class, we discussed the updation of a result set. That is how to update a result set row, delete a row in result set, insert a row in result set. And later we discussed the concept of transaction processing. So a transaction is nothing but a set of database operation that we must complete. So if any one of the SQL statement execution fails, then the entire transaction fails. So all the changes that are made to the database has to be rolled back. So a transaction may have many tasks. So for example, consider a shopping. So consider this online shopping example. So here what are the steps we have is in the beginning. So we will select and put the products in the cart. So cart is first prepared, and second we will place the order. So we will click on the place order, we'll apply coupon and complete the transaction. So here payment is also done in this step. So once it is done, we will get the confirmation email. So we will get confirmation SMS and email from the online shopping site. So these are the three activities for this scenario. Let us consider that has to be done. Now this particular transaction, if we look at as a whole, it has three tasks. So a transaction can have many tasks. So now if, let us say, the payment is successful and the order is placed, but at the same time the email server is very slow or the email server is down. So for some reasons the email or SMS couldn't be sent. Now if this sending of confirmation email fails, then does all the other tasks in the transaction should be rolled back? So if the first and the second step succeeds, then do we need to roll back all? So this has succeeded, this also has succeeded, but this due to email server has failed. So if sending an email is failed, then do we need to roll back these two operations? So that is the question. So that's why a transaction when consists of many tasks, some of which don't need to be rolled back when the entire transaction fails. So in our case, the three tasks include these one. Now, for this transaction to succeed, all the three tasks must complete before we consider the transaction to be completed. So in the real world scenario, if payment has succeeded and order has been placed, even if the confirmation email is not sent, we can send it once again when the server is up and running. So this part of that particular transaction is not that important. So if any unimportant task fails, then in the application we may need not roll back all the transaction. So it is just if we ignore this particular part or do it once again, we can continue. So in the J2EE component, we can control the number of tasks that are to be rolled back using the concept of save points. So this save point is introduced in JDBC 3.0. It is just a virtual marker. So save point acts as a virtual marker. So it is a sort of virtual marker. So using this, we are just marking the transaction. So this save point will define which tasks, the task at which the rollback should stop. So where the rollback should stop, so that can be indicated using the save point. So there can be many save points. So again, in our application, we can have many save points. So many save points can be present. So this indicates where the rollback should stop. That's it. So the name, each save point is identified by a name, and this name of the save point should be passed to the rollback. So that will indicate where the rollback operation should stop. So in our example, let us say here we are having one save point, that is S1. After placement of order, we have another S2. Now, when this confirmation email fails, so anyway, we will be calling the rollback method. So for this rollback method, we have to supply the save point name until where the unwounding, that is the rolling back, will take place. So here we need to stop the rollback till S2 only. So we'll pass S2. Now what happens if the confirmation email fails? Then this will roll back all the operations till S2. So whatever operations are there behind S2 will be committed. That's it. They will not be rolled back. So we can have as many save points as we want in our program, and each save point is identified by a name and they act as a virtual marker. If we want to release any save point, then we can use release save point method. So the name of the save point has to be, if we want to remove it, so we can remove it by passing the name of the save point. So consider this particular example. So where we have connecting to the database through loading of drivers, and then so here the first thing what we need to do is we have to set the auto commit to false. So auto commit will be set to false. Then we are declaring two queries. So similar to the example which we discussed in our previous class, that is just an updation of street address of two customers. So two queries we have, query 1 and query 2. So now in this particular example, so we shall see how to place a save point. So two queries we have, that is query 1 and query 2. So what we are doing is we are creating a statement for first one. After that, we are creating a save point, that is database dot set save point sp1. So sp1 is the name of the save point, and we are just storing that save point in a variable. So that is s1. So this database is a connection object. So save points are created on connection objects. So s1 is our save point variable, but the name of the save point is this one, sp1 only. So sp1 is the name of the save point. Then we have created one more statement for the second query. So we are executing both, that is execute update query 1, execute update query 2. Then we are committing the database. So once the commit is successful, then we will close the statements, and if both the queries executed without any exceptions, then no need to have the save point. So we can release the save point and close the connection. So just like how we close the statement object and the database connection, we can also release the save point. So using the method on the connection object, that is connection object dot release save point, name of the save point sp1. So remember, we have to pass the name of the save point, not the name of the variable. Okay. So here, when the transaction is successful, the save point will be released. So what happens if the transaction has failed? So if a transaction has failed, then we have to roll it back. So that particular part of the program will be present in the catch statement. So in the catch statement, SQL error we are getting, and here we have to use the rollback. Then till where we have to roll back? So that we have to pass over here, that is till sp1. So again, sp1 is the name of the save point. So database dot rollback sp1. So that has to be passed over here. Then while rolling back all the database operations till sp1 will be rolled back. So this is a simple example of using the save point, but in practically in the application, so this will not be as simple as this one. We are just executing the update query, that's it. But in real world applications, so the transactions will be complex. So they have many update operations to be done on a table. So for example, if we consider a bank transaction, just like we discussed in our last class, that is a Google Pay transaction. So it will be storing many details. So first it has to take whether our account has sufficient balance before proceeding with the transaction. Then once the balance is available, then it will check the recipient, whether the recipient account is valid or not, whether it is active or not. So that has to be checked. Once the recipient account is active, then the transfer will take place. In the transfer, the amount from our account will be deducted, the amount will be credited to uh, the recipient, and at the same time the history of the log, entire activities log will be saved. So many things will be there, so it will not be as simple as these hmm, save points which we discussed. So for just for demonstration purpose, we have used this save point. So similarly, we can use any number of save points and execute the database queries, and wherever we want till that point we can roll back. So this is with regarding to save points. So save points are nothing but a virtual markers. So next we shall discuss the concept of batching SQL. So till now we saw one way of putting the SQL statements together to form a transaction. And another way to combine the SQL statements into a transaction is to batch them together. So batch the transaction together, batch the statements together into a single transaction. So transactions are combined together. So that we call it as a batching. So it means, so it is combining SQL, combining of SQL statements whatever SQL statements we have in a transaction, they will all be grouped together into a single transaction. So these will all be grouped together into a single transaction, and this single transaction is executed. For this purpose, so we have a method called as add batch. So the method name is add batch. So this add batch method is called on a statement object. So this add batch method, an SQL statement is added into the parameter. So here the parameter is a SQL statement. So SQL statement means a string can be passed as a parameter. So once all the SQL statement that comprise a transaction are included in a batch, we can execute all the SQL statements using the method that is execute batch. So execute batch method can be used to execute all the SQL statements that are currently present in this batch. This method will return an integer array that contains number of SQL statements that are executed successfully. So if integer array is displayed using the batch update exception error. So if there are any errors, so that will be present in this particular returned value. So once the batch is executed, we can also clear the batch. So if we want to remove all the statements from the batch, current batch, so then we can call clear batch. So clear batch statement can be used. So these are the three methods that can be used in batching of SQL. So add batch method to add the SQL statements into the batch. Here, this is a SQL statement means it is not the SQL statement object. So it is the SQL query, that's it. Query text. So for each add batch, so we'll be passing a query text. So all the queries will be present in a batch. Then we can execute all of them together using the execute batch method. If you want to clear the batch, so we can use clear batch. So it will remove all the statements from the batch. So let us look at the example. So let us consider the same two queries so which we discussed. That is query 1 and query 2, updating of customer street values for two customers, that is Bob and Tim. So these statements are present in the text, that is query 1 and query 2. These query 1 and query 2 are the query text. Then what we do, we'll just create a statement. So that is there. Then we are adding query 1 and query 2 to a batch using the method that is add batch. So this is called on the statement object dot add batch query 1, statement object dot add batch query 2. The two statements are now added to the batch. Once they are added to the batch, the next thing is we can execute the batch. So how to execute the batch? Using the method that is execute batch, like this. Statement object dot execute batch. This execute batch will return the integer array. So that integer array is like this. So int updated. So updated is a integer array that is returned. Once the execution is successful, we can call the commit method then close the statements. Here again, we have only one statement in this example, that is data request. So we don't have 1 and 2. If there are errors in the execution of these queries, then an exception is thrown, that is batch update exception. If there is any exception in execution of a batch statements, then this particular exception will be thrown, that is batch update exception. So batch update exception will be thrown. Here we can print all the details, whatever we want regarding that exception. Then we can print the error codes. So what are the error codes we can print? So here error is there. So error dot get update count. So how many statements are updated? So that count we can print over here. Again, this will return an array. So we can just iterate over it and we can print it. Then we can also get the SQL exception. So if there are any SQL exception in execution of that, then we can also print that SQL error message can also be printed for all the statements. So this is the batch execution. In application, real world application, the transactions will always be executed as a batch. So whatever statements that needs to be executed to complete a transaction will all be placed in a batch. All the statements will be placed in a batch and that batch is executed. So if there is an exception in the batch, then all the details will be logged together. Even the failure of the updations of any statement can be stored in the database itself and they will be rolled back. So that's why in financial applications, whenever you see a transaction fails and if you inquire with the customer care, they will tell, so it will take 72 hours, 48 hours, 2 days, 3 days, like that for reversing a transaction. So why? Because when a transaction fails, that has to be rolled back. So all the details will be present in the database. And again, for the failed transactions, every day they will at the end, maybe at midnight, they will again verify it. Then the failed transactions will be restarted. So sometimes what happens, the transactions can be restarted and executed. That possibility is also there. So in the database log, so they will maintain everything. So all the details will be there. So the transaction can be either restarted or completely aborted and rolled back. So it is the batch execution that is done in real world application. So this is about the transaction processing. So the next concept we have is the result set holdability. So whenever a commit method is called, what happens? When we call commit method, all the database operation become persistence, they get saved. Then all result set objects that were created for a transaction will be closed. So the result set is nothing but the data that is returned by the database when certain queries are executed. Once we call the commit, then the result set of that particular transaction will be closed. But sometimes what happens in the Java program, we may need the result set objects even after we complete the commit method. So in that case, we need a holdability. Now we can control whether the result set objects should be closed or not when a commit method is called. For that purpose, two constants can be used. Again, these can be used in statement of create statement only. So whatever constants we have discussed here, be it the results while discussing the result set or in the transaction, all of those constants will be placed in the create statement method only. So here, in order to hold the result set, two constants we have to use, that is hold cursors over commit and close cursors at commit. So these two are contradictory, which means hold cursor over commit means the result set will remain valid even if we call the commit method. And the other one, close cursor at commit, which means this is by default actually, which means the cursor for the result set will be closed when we call the commit method. So these are the two constants that we can use for result set holdability. Only one constant provides the holdability, that is this one, hold cursors over commit. So then we have row sets. A JDBC row set object is used to encapsulate the result set for use with enterprise Java beans. So we have one more concept, that is enterprise Java beans. So enterprise Java beans is completely a different module that will take care of the enterprise application. Here, a row set object contains rows of data from the tables that can be used in a disconnected operation. So assume that we have a result set, we need to process it, then the connectivity gets failed with the database. Then the rows in the database we can still further process. So that facility is available in enterprise Java beans. For that particular purpose, so we can use this row set. So enterprise Java bean can interact with a row set object without having to connect with the database. So this is for ideal for applications that have the handheld devices, that is PDA devices. So where once the database is dumped, then no need to connect with the database. So only data that is required for that particular client will be dumped in a row set. So here row set means it is an enterprise Java bean that contains the result set actually. So what is the use of row set? We can process the results in the row set even if we don't have a connection with the database also. So and it is useful for PDA devices. So that is the handheld personal devices. So auto generated keys. So it is common in a DBMS to automatically generate unique key for the table. So you might have used these automated keys. So if we want to use the surrogate keys in the DBMS table, that is we want the database to generate the unique key for us. So maybe row ID like that. So automatically an integer will keep on incrementing for each row if you have used the auto increment feature. So this auto generated keys can also be used in Java also. So in DBMS, so this is used to automatically generate unique key for a table as rows are inserted into the table. So the generated keys method, so get generated keys. This particular method can be used on a statement object to return the key generated by the database. Suppose if we are inserting a row into the database, as and when we insert a row, for each row an integer value is generated, that is auto increment value in the database, and that value gets inserted into the database. But in the program, sometimes we may need what is the value that is generated, because on that particular value, we may want to insert one more row in another table. So that ID that is which is automatically generated, that is required if we are operating on that value on some other table, and maybe in the same table only. For that purpose, in order to get that particular generated key, we can use get generated key method on a statement object. So immediately after the insert statement, we can call this particular method, and that will return the generated key again as a result set only. Then we can use the metadata method to retrieve the metadata related to automatically generated key, such as what is the type, what is the property of automatically generated key. So how to use it? On result set, that is get metadata method. So what is the use of auto generated keys? So auto generated keys are useful when we want to get the value of an auto incremented value in the database on a newly inserted row. Which method we have to call? That is get generated keys. So that will get generated keys will return a result set. In that result set, we have to use the get metadata method to extract the details related to that particular metadata. So then we have a concept that is called as metadata. So metadata, as we know, it is a data about data. So J2EE component can access metadata of a database using the database metadata interface. So database metadata interface can be used to retrieve information about the database, information about the table, column, index, and other informations that is provided by the DBMS. So in applications, at times we may need these details. How many tables are there in the database? The names of each table, the names of the columns that is present in the table, their data type, all are required sometimes in the Java or in the program we need to implement. For example, let us consider a scenario where we are storing all your details. Your attendance we are storing, IA marks we are storing. Let us assume you are in the first semester. In the first semester, you will get your USN after third test only, right, while generating the hall tickets. So till that time, we will be using some other way to identify each one of you. Maybe your admission number we'll use. So using the admission number only, we will enter the attendance details, IA marks, everything. But finally, at the end of the semester, so we will get the USN, which means in all our table, we need to update your admission number value with your USN value. In that case, we never know how many tables are there. If we know exactly 2 tables are there, we can directly go and do the update operation. So where for this admission number, change it to this USN, that we can do. But in real applications, there may be many number of tables that are having the data. Maybe your login details into the software, your other assessment values, that is assignment, fees paid receipts. So all those things, many tables will be there. So it will be beyond the control of a programmer to know how many tables are there also. Maybe how we can do if there are 50, 60 tables are there. So in that case, what we can do is we can iterate over all the tables in the database. Wherever your admission number is present in the column called as USN, we can replace it. So that is where these kind of metadata informations will be useful. And this is also useful when you change your branch. So at the third semester, you will change the branch. So when branch changing happens, so USN will also get changed. So at that case, again, once new USN is generated, we have to replace the USNs. Then also we have to do this task in many tables. Then today we may have 50 tables, but tomorrow when the application grows, so we may have 60, 70 tables. So it is hard to track all the tables, and no single programmer will do all the coding. So a group of people will be involved in it. So who has used which table and where the USN is present, so others will not know it. So in that case, so we'll go to with the metadata of the table. So using the metadata of the database, we'll get all the table names. Then we will search in all the tables which column is having the column name as USN. There we'll replace the USNs. So that is one real world example where we can really use the metadata details. So this metadata object we can obtain, and some of the methods can be called. So that is get database product name. So this will return the product of the database, whether it is Oracle, MySQL, DB2, like that. Then get username. So that will return the username through which we have connected to the database. Then get URL. So returns the URL to the database. Get the schema. So returns all the schema names that are available in the database. Then get primary keys. So we can obtain the primary key of a table. Then get procedures. So get procedures will return all the stored procedures that are present in the database. Get tables. So that will return all the table names that are there in the database. So these are the few methods using which we can extract the metadata details. So then we have result set metadata. So there are two types of metadata that can be retrieved from the database. One is the metadata that describes the result set. Another one is the metadata that describes the database itself. So two kinds of metadata are present. So result set metadata can be obtained like this. So result set metadata RM is equal to result.get metadata. So on the result is nothing but a result set. So result set object dot get metadata. So these metadata that describes the database and the metadata that describes the result set can be obtained. So metadata that describes the result set is retrieved by calling get metadata method on the result set object. So once the result set metadata is retrieved, again from the Java component, we can call some of the methods and extract the details, like get column count. So this will return the number of columns in the result set. Then get column name. So returns the name of the column specified by the column number. So we will pass the column number, column name will be returned. Similarly, column number will pass, its data type will be returned. So there are many other methods are also there which are used to retrieve the practically any information that we need to know about the database and the result set. So more methods are there. So that is beyond the scope of our discussions. So these three are the methods that are really required for the application that I discussed. So there this column name is useful. So right, column name is USN, then we'll run the update command like that. So there are a few exceptions. Anyway, data types are also there. So in our previous all discussions, so we have many set and get method we have used, that is set string, get string, right? So if SQL type is character, the different SQL type character type include char, varchar, long, varchar. So for all these we can use the Java type as string. Then the other Java types we can use is Boolean, byte, short, integer, long, float, double, binary array, date, time, timestamp. So for each SQL data type, we'll be having a corresponding Java type also. That type we can use in set and get methods, and also the update methods. The various exceptions that are there in Java to support the SQL is SQL exceptions, SQL warnings, and data truncation. So These are the three kinds of exceptions that are thrown by the JDBC methods. SQL exceptions, so they commonly reflect a SQL syntax error in the query statement and are thrown by many methods contained in the SQL package. This SQL exception is thrown only when we have a syntax error, and while compilation we will get to know this, so we can change them and quickly resolve it. So once the compilation is successful in the production environment, so this particular exception is most commonly used, commonly caused by the connectivity issues. So if our program cannot establish the connection with the database, then only these kind of SQL exceptions will be thrown. So otherwise, if there are syntax errors out there, we can change the code during the compilation itself. And SQL exception we can get only when we have coding error. And other thing is the SQL warning. SQL warnings are thrown when the DBMS throws the warning. So even in our Oracle or MySQL, when you execute certain queries, warnings are thrown. So warnings are not errors, so they are just a caution messages that the DBMS sends. So SQL warning throws warnings that are received by the connection from the DBMS. Using the get warnings method on the connection object, we can extract the warning and we can read it. So data truncation. So this data truncation exception is raised whenever data is lost. So truncation means the part of the data is lost. So whenever data is lost due to truncation of data value, then data truncation exception is thrown. So data truncation means a part of the data is lost. So why it is lost? So that due to the connection failure, or the data is so large to fit, or timeout, connection timeout has occurred. So on these cases, this data truncation exception can be raised. Okay, so this is about the exceptions we have in JDBC. So with this, we have completed all the topics covering this particular module, that is JDBC. So we started with JDBC, what is JDBC, why it is required to connect the database. Then we discussed the drivers, the different types of drivers, type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. Then we discussed the JDBC process, which means the 5 steps in connecting to the database. Then each one of them, each 5 step in connectivity we discussed. Statement, while executing we discussed the statement object, the 3 kinds of object, that is a statement object, prepared statement object, callable statement object we discussed. In the while processing the result, we discussed the result set, that is scrollable result set, updatable result set. Then transaction processing we discussed today, result set, holdability, auto generated keys, and metadata informations. So this completes this particular module. So it is a very simple one. The only thing is we need to remember the names of the functions, that's it. So remember the names of the functions, then the example programs. So in the test, in the first test, even though I mentioned that you have to write the examples compulsorily, many of you have not written the sufficient examples. So in programming language, it is the example that carries more and more weightage than the explanations. So that's why, so how much example you have to write, that also you must remember. Whenever certain topics are asked, you need to write only just part of the code is sufficient. No need to write the entire program. So the part of the program you can write. Again, you have to match it with the weightage. So for how many marks that particular question has been asked. So depending on that, you have to decide whether to write a complete example or only a part. So that's it for today's class. In the next class, so we will have a quiz on JSP programming. Okay, so you can enter your attendance in the chat window and exit.